Jungle.
COVID-19 has put a tremendous amount of pressure on us as a nation, but particularly on parents, teachers, and children. The ongoing debate of whether it's safe to take our children back to school has been a contentious issue. It is from this premise that I wanted to ask us, should we do it? Should we not? I'm a mother, I'm a doctor, and I want to know from expert leaders in pediatrics, world-class educators, and psychologists, including parents and children themselves. Should we take our kids back to school? Is it safe? I'm very sensitive to the fact that there are some schools where online education is just not possible, but where you have the option, where online education and quality tele-education, remote children's teaching is a viable option. Should this be considered? To quote the famous Shakespearean play, Hamlet says in Act 3, Scene 1, to be or not to be. I want to parody that and say, to school or not to school? That is the question. Come and join us, tune in, and let us hear from our professionals and from the voices of children and parents.
I really enjoyed being at home for most of this year because it helped me figure out a couple of things. One, my career path that I'd like to go into, and two, a couple of hobbies that I'm really interested in that I had no idea about before. So I would say it's been quite a positive impact on my life. I missed my friends, but I really discovered a lot about myself.
And I think it's better to be at school because you have more interactive. You can have face-to-face to teacher, not computer to computer. Because if you stay too long on your computer and not have water or food, you'll feel pale and you won't feel nice. Trust me, I've had that experience. So that's why I think it's better to be at school, and you have more interactive to work and stuff. Like some kids at home, they search the things up, they ask friends for help when it's supposed to be a loan assignment, and all kind of other stuff.
And I missed the interaction between student and teacher, and I feel like a lot of school kids can relate because that's the type of interaction they need to actually learn stuff, because it was a bit difficult to learn stuff on your own that you have never learned before, and to go on online classes, and not a lot of kids could afford data or have Wi-Fi at home to do all that stuff. So I think it's better to go to school and have that interaction with kids who need more help, or just to be in a class environment to feel more safe. And it increased a lot of anxiety with staying at home and learning from home.
Are you scared of the coronavirus?
No.
So did you like having online lessons with your teachers?
Yeah.
Is it nicer than being at school, or do you like online?
Online and school.
How do you feel being back at school during coronavirus?
Nice.
I want to talk about the mental health of our children. I'm sure it differs from in the different age groups, but maybe Felicia, if you can tell us from your experience with the children that you've seen, how has their mental health been affected, their emotional status during this time?
Thank you so much, Dr. Mahalepu. So there's different aspects that the children has been affected by. First it was school is closing. Wow, they got excited actually because I get to sleep late, I don't get to go to school. But then when things really started setting in and the seriousness of the virus, now fear, you know,
Yeah.
because I think we all thought, okay, maybe not all of us, but what was communicated that it could just be 2 weeks and then it's over. But it was not. And when it went past that, uncertainty, and also children has also been affected because parents have that uncertainty, that fear, that anxiety. And a lot of the
Yeah.
times children are so sensitive to what the parents go through. They're observant and they look up to their parents for example. So if my parent is filled with fear, anxiety, because there was a lot of pressure on parents as well at the beginning. They had to dive in as teachers. They had to think about their jobs. They had to think about so much. They had to run a household and working from home as
Yeah.
well. So it was just a lot that happened. And also you get from the young ones to the older ones, the younger ones, they're so used to going to school.
Yeah.
They're so used to seeing their friend, and now I'm told I cannot see my friend. And they had to go through a mourning stage. And if you see our matriculants as well, it felt like their whole life was being shattered. They waited so long, like 11 years to be matric, and they imagined everything playing out, and all of a sudden, everything just fell apart. So all the children went through, and like they go through uncertainty, same as adults. But for them, they don't understand it to the extent of adults as well, because their world is important to them. And that's the world of them to not see their friends is a major thing. It's a big part of them, especially from the ages 12 to 19. That's where they socialize. They need to socialize. They need to see each other. They need to just talk about what happened in the day, and that's taken away from them, because that's also a very important part, according to Erikson. It's identity. It's a part of who you are as a person. And also a lot of them had so much anxiety, some of them breaking down, some of them going more into their work. And also when homeschooling started, teachers were sending in a lot of work, because I think that whole adjustment to everything, you can't run it the same like school was run face to face. So the children became overworked. They became anxious, and parents, it's just, you need to finish your schoolwork, but that's because that's what we used to know. And then they started to become irritated and anxious, their sleep patterns, sleep disturbances, appetite. Some children were overeating, some undereating. And then this excludes the children that lives in abusive homes, that had to constantly be at home because school was an escape.
Yeah.
And it became so much more difficult for them. So it also depended on the environment they lived in. And also it depended on the children that were already struggling with anxiety disorder or depression disorder. So that just added, the whole pandemic. They actually went to the point where they felt like they were at the edge. So children has really been affected, and it comes out physically.
Go to school or not to school. Now I want to talk to our teachers now. And I'll pose a question initially before we go to the rose among the thorns. Let's talk to Mr. Rothman and Mr. Rath. What systems and what have you put in place in your various schools to ensure the safety of the kids, and just to reassure us as parents that everything is being done without creating a scary environment, navigating change in this time? Maybe we'll start with Mr. Rothman.
I think the most important thing for me has been, schools are social environments. They're communities that we absolutely thrive on that one-to-one contact, that understanding, that You know, we've got all these role players within our environment, and the importance of just ensuring that everybody that is part of this really, really dynamic, changing daily environment is catered for. So we've been very fortunate at our school that we haven't had a single infection within a child. We also haven't had a single infection in any of our staff. We've only had 2 tests that have had to be conducted, so we've been very, very fortunate. Prior to us returning to school, and we returned to school on the 1st of June, we obviously spent a lot of time preparing for the children coming back. We followed a very, very metered approach to how our children were going to come back, starting with our 7s, moving into our 1s, and then every week we reintroduced 2 additional grades. So I was very excited today. I'm the first Crawford school to have 100% return rate in 3 of my classes. And I think it really has been linked to the fact that the parents have got a great sense of security in the way that we've managed the process up to now. So obviously our first port of call has been the temperature screening, but that really, having spoken to a lot of medical professionals, as well as just a first indicator that our guard needs to go up. Obviously sanitizing is number 1 for us. It's quite an interesting thing in the morning. The car windows go down and the hands come out. The children know exactly what the procedure is already as far as the sanitizing goes. When the children leave the vehicles, obviously they're accompanied up to the first hand washing station. It's taken me 5 months to realize that I think we were doing a little bit too much. So they were sanitizing, hand washing, being accompanied up to their classrooms, hand washing again before they even entered the venue. So we have very, very strict controls as far as our distancing, as far as the masks. No parents are allowed to enter the premises as well, even in their vehicles, without wearing a mask. They have to have their masks on. Okay. The children have to exit the vehicles as well wearing their masks. But we've definitely seen a greater understanding as far as protecting each other goes. I think that for me was the biggest thing. It's exactly what Felicia was saying, was that initial fear that the children had, and it was very much localized to that self-fear that they were feeling through the information that was being shared, coming through the news. You know, children would arrive at school and their biggest fear would be what they'd seen in the media. They were bombarded, and nobody took the time to sit down and debrief the children. We were all worried about parents and all of that, and these children had been through such trauma as well that the first step, getting out of their car, was huge. It was huge. And the one thing I said to my staff, the one thing I can add to my CV now as a principal of a school is toilet duty. Ensuring that everybody is so positive. I think for me the biggest thing is, and has been really, that I've said to my kids at school and I've said to my staff, this is the way we are living for now. For now, we have to ensure that we look after each other and we work together as a team. Children. And if I can just highlight, you know, what Dr. Ahmed was saying as well, when you look at the comorbidities that are out there. My first child that arrived back at school is a type 1 diabetic that has had heart surgery, and she has not missed a single day of school.
Wow.
Absolutely amazing. So, and what I do love as well is the fact that all my medical parents, their children are back at school, and that shows a lot of faith as well in the system.
Would agree with me that I'm sure you're seeing a lot of eczema on the hands. You know, the kids especially the sanitizers are quite harsh. I've told parents that, listen, if the child if there's water and there's soap, try and stick to that, and if there's a cream afterwards, because those little things, when you get those little cracked hands, you know, it's it's an issue. So I think this is such a rapidly evolving scenario that we're living in. And Mr. Ross, maybe you can also just elaborate what's happening at King's College in Braamfontein.
Thank you, Dr. Malebo. Yeah, so we the entrance to the campus looks quite different. We have got the big open parking lot that has the main access to the church, which is on campus, and then only behind the church we have the 4 different stations. So we've got the prep. We've divided into 2. So we've got the foundation phase. They go into their gate entering their part of the campus. We've got the intermediate phase, and then we've got the college phase on the totally separate entrance. And then we've got staff on duty doing the screening and scanning in the mornings there. And then we've got also the preschool on campus. They are also on a separate entrance. So we've tried and spread them, not so that so that they don't stand too close to each other, trying to decrease the length of the queues, and I think that has been very, very effective. Unfortunately, the thermometers have been, if I can use the pun, quite temperamental. They haven't been as efficient as we would want them to be, but we don't really have an alternative for them. Especially during the winter, it was quite difficult in the mornings. And then, very similar to what Mr. Rothman said, social distancing within the classes. Luckily, our classes are physically big enough to accommodate, the majority of our children. We're not at full capacity yet. We're sitting at probably about 70% of our kids on campus, which I think is still very good. And I think our grade 1s from Monday will be full. All of them will have returned, wow. And then what we found is, especially we'll talk about the differences between the 2 schools a little bit later. But and then what I felt is to try and keep the protocols. Obviously, Mr. Rothman and Cheryl, you'll know about the COVID-19 policy documents and everything, and the length of that. As it is, what I felt was, to try and to make it as simple as possible, for the staff and for the children as well. Break it down to social distance, mask, and sanitizer. And I think to not overcomplicating it, it gave them a sense of security, especially that initial, oh my word, I'm coming to school tomorrow. What's going to happen? And even the staff. Especially on the prep side, obviously they came back a little bit later. I had a meeting with them, with the staff, the Friday prior to that. And I just told them, listen, it's a normal day. By 9 o'clock, everybody will be in classes. It'll be settled and you'll see it's just a normal day. And, just to not downplay the risk, but not to make a big fuss about it. I think that was quite key. The big issue that we are struggling with at the moment, and I'm assuming it's all the schools across the country is breaks. Break times are quite difficult to manage. We've painted blocks, 4x4 square meter blocks on both fields. We've got a bottom field and a top field, spreading out the different phases. But kids, they want to run around, they want to play soccer, so it's obviously, you need to, Mr. Rothman, you can add a policeman to your, to your CV as well. The staff, they constantly need to police the kids. But I think overall, luckily, being outside, the risk is a lot less than what it is, in a confined space. Although it might not look good, for visitors who don't really know and have done the research, luckily the risk, is a lot less. But that has been one of the biggest headaches for. I think overall we do feel that our systems are good. We've had, I think, 4 children that have contracted the virus, all off campus. I think 2 staff members, again, all off campus. And that's not something that you can control. But I think the positive about that is the fact that there was no cross contamination within the classroom. I think that speaks to the protocols that have been put in place and more importantly followed.
Wow, thanks. And just to a funny story, the whole idea of, coming out with the mask, and for the younger kids, certainly I think the kids in primary school, prep school, I've seen with my daughter, it's the most exciting thing. I mean, she every morning chooses which mask, the pink one or the blue one, and her friends, Atara's bringing a pink one, so I must be pink, and I think children are very versatile. If you compare the emotional impact of children, coming to school and children who are homeschooled, have you seen any difference in terms of the emotional impact on them and even the academic impact? I say this because I know a decrease in concentration levels. Have you noticed any difference there? Maybe you can just elaborate there.
Being in a lockdown situation with their parents for so long and not socializing with their friends, it really has had a very big impact. We've seen it from an emotional perspective, from an academic perspective. Someone was saying that, I think it was Felicia, that we were giving too much homework. And, and I had to try and train our teachers to say the children cannot act as efficiently as they did in the classroom. And I think that was a big learning curve for the students and for the teachers to understand that to expect a grade 8 boy to sit in front of his computer and go from one lesson to another lesson to another lesson without gaming in between is just almost impossible. It's just not part of their brain development. They're not that organized, they're not that disciplined. I think even adults are not that disciplined to be in front of, on Zoom meetings all day long. And yet we were expecting our kids to, okay, now you're in life sciences, then you're going to go to physical sciences, then you're going to go to maths. And they just were really, even our top academic students were really battling. They just, and I think I did a lot of research to try and help our staff understand that. And it was saying that in lockdown, the efficiency could be as low as 35 to 50% of what you usually have in a classroom. And I think that is a reality that we've been dealing with. I think we're really lucky as schools that are represented here is that at least we had a good online program. Our kids had data. They could still be educated during this time. But we had to understand that so many South Africans couldn't, they were totally isolated. They couldn't call out for help. They couldn't call out if they were homes that they were unhappy at. The stats on child abuse increased. And I think that really is so sad when we look at that. When, from the academic perspective, children that you would ask, how is it going? They'd say, absolutely brilliant. And then when they wrote an assessment, you could see there was a disconnect. So they thought they were doing really well. And these are good kids. These are the ones, the more senior ones, our matrics who academic colours, who want to get into varsity. They really thought they knew what was going on. And unfortunately, the exams didn't always show that, or the assessments. And I think the reality is, it's not just at our school, because even the IB has realized that our matrics are not functioning at 100% academically. So they've been given the option to either write finals in November or in May next year because of the anxiety, because of the trauma. And I think it really has been a trauma. I like the idea of helping our teenagers to physical distance, but not social distance. Because the teenagers who have social distance regresses. They need their friends, they need their community, and they need, and what we also saw is while the lockdown was still in place, and now it's, to a less extent now, they were going more to social media to communicate. More and more different platforms were being used, but some of the younger teenagers, the little grade 7s and grade 8, weren't tech savvy enough to understand that how the dangers of social media. So there are a lot of, I put it out there, my friends are all upset with me, I don't know what to do with it, I didn't mean it that way, they interpret it differently. So they had to learn a whole different way of socializing, because they were trying to make up of it. We've also had some students who have stayed at home because their parents have had very serious comorbidities. They are very fearful. They're fearful that they're falling behind. They're fearful that they're losing their friendship group. They think they might fail at the end of the year, and they think they're missing out. and a teenager hates missing out. They want to be at the forefront of everything. So I really do feel for them. You know, they want to be at school, but they have this guilt because their parents have serious comorbidity. And I think what we've done as a school is try to support the whole community as much as possible.